today that topic is navigation. So throughout this talk, I'll just showcase how it's easy to build with Jetpack Compose as we just look at what navigation is and also the best ways to do it. And of course, I'll open up for question later. So pretty excited to get started. So navigation in Jetpack Compose, what does that mean? When I look at this slide, what I had in mind was just to talk about how navigation was before. And that is by before, I mean back in the days when we used to build with XML. So if you built with XML before, you might have seen how it was, like we would have, especially if you're navigating the fragments, you would have a fragment and unpack stack, but I have a slide for that too that will showcase how we used to build it before. But now with Compose, I'm so excited that the fact that we just get to create a build class, create a destination, and then have some route as strings, and then we can navigate with that, which is super cool. Now, I like to mention in advance, that I do know many people still have legacy code, and I know we're not getting rid of legacy code. And I have experienced a little bit of pain points with Jetpack Compose navigation and legacy code, so we'll talk about that later too. However, that said, let's jump into navigation in Compose. Now, importance of navigation is just ensuring that your users go through your app seamlessly. You want to make sure that if you have an app that has a bottom navigation, users are able to navigate from point A to point B to point C or D pretty easily and then go back the way they came easily. And if you send them out of the bottom navigation, it should also be easy. And then if you include a back navigation on top and also have people use your system back, you should be able to make it much easier for your users. And in the past, as I mentioned, Android navigation involved fragment transaction, activity switching, complex backstack. And that's why I was inspired to write this talk, where I talk about how easy it is right now and how we developers, if especially you're a new developer, you can use the current tools that we have to build a better navigation for your app. This is if you're starting from scratch. If you're not starting from scratch, I know you'll have to learn a lot because of course the code I'll be showcasing here might not work for your app, but of course the little snippets and ideas I'll show in pseudocode might help you get through the app itself. And these methods, of course, the ones we talked about before of navigation were pretty error-prone. That's the way we were using it before, let's say Jetpack Compose, and that's now simplified. So this is how it looked. I had this particular fragment. So if you've seen this before, you might see a similarity. So we had override function on navigation item selected, and then you would declare that support fragment manager, and then you would do var is on stack equals false. Like there was a lot of code that involved doing this. So as you can see that slide, it walks you through the down memory lane, which is super cool for me. Now, a couple of things before I even go very far is Jetpack Compose is a game changer UI in UI development. And for those who don't know Jetpack Compose, I just want to mention it's a new UI framework or toolkit for Android developers to use. And it's decorative, it's pretty nice. And it's not just about the UI component, it also brings the navigation into the modern age, which is very, very cool. Jetpack Compose brings all the benefits of navigation components, which is very good, and it simplifies and handles complex routing, which is something that I know most of us might have experienced in a time. Okay, so before we jump into even writing the code, I want us to go through common types of navigation. And why is this important? So the reason as to why this is important is because many of us get to, if you're an Android engineer, you'll get to be asked these questions from your lifetime. And especially during a coding interview. Like, what are common types of navigations? And the most popular ones is they will ask you, what are explicit intent? What are implicit intent? And you have to define those. And I've also interviewed other engineers, and I've asked these questions too. So an explicit intent navigates from one activity to another within Android. So this was before right now, the new pattern that's recommended is have a single activity. I know this is a little bit controversial, but it's have a single activity, and then you can have a couple of screens, which you call like fragments. But before that, not from experience, when I was building my application from back in 2014, I had one activity that started so many. So I had like one activity opens another activity opens another activity, like that. So it was a bunch of activity, open activity, which was pretty interesting. So that's what explicit intent is. Now, implicit intent requires an action from another app component without specifying the target component explicitly. And this is a good example, opening web page. So I hope that's a good summary. If you encounter this issue, especially when you're in an interview, it will be easy now to remember. Implicit intent is opening from a web page. Explicit is just inside your application, and think about an activity to another activity. Now, the navigation component library provided by Android Jetpack simplifies navigation between destination in your app. And the reason why I mentioned this one and a couple of more in my next slides is because we still use not deprecated, but we still use legacy code. So even though what I'll be showing is pretty new and the simplified way of doing navigation, I have to acknowledge that all applications, not all applications are using the new modern way. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning, I've experienced pinpoint where, for instance, I was speaking to one of our attendees that's here earlier, telling him how if we're using Jetpack Compose and I'm trying to navigate back to a previous screen and it's a fragment that's not compose-based, it was a big issue, especially when we had one way of handling our navigation using, let's say, the app, using the app back navigation, something that I was like, wow, they need to make this easier for us developers. Other navigation types of navigations, we have bottom navigation, which is navigating between primary destination within your app. We have the draw navigation, which I think many of us here abandoned. I don't know how many of you, raise your hand if you're using draw navigation. No hand, so that's cool. Oh, wait, okay, somebody raised their hand. So draw navigation is the side where, for instance, you have your application. I think a good example would be Twitter. Twitter uses the draw navigation on the side. So that was the default. I remember when I was building my first application, every navigation to me was a draw navigation. I used to have that. But now, these days, I feel like many applications use the tabbed and also the bottom navigation a lot, because I think the application you're building for my setup is also bottom navigation. And then we have the tab layer, as I mentioned, it's next there, tab layout, which is pretty good too. And the view pager is also a very common type of navigation where you have like view pager, you're viewing the pages. And then the toolbar. Many people don't know this, but the toolbar, the back action, that's also navigation, and you need to handle it well. Because imagine if there was that and then somebody wanted to navigate back and they can't go back, what happens? They're stuck in that screen, so they have to use the system back navigation. So it's very important to always use the back navigation that makes things easy, and also having that in mind. Now, what we're going to focus on today is, as I've mentioned, is the common pattern, which is the bottom navigation. And to me, like I mentioned, I feel like this is a preference. So sorry, everyone, it's a preference. But the bottom navigation is pretty way easier because you have options in your application to build a couple of screens and also build upon those screens. Like if I have home, and then I have profile, and then I have a couple of new, for instance, budgeting buddy, I have transaction, budget, and then I have tasks and settings. And when I navigate through, let's say, transaction, it opens a new screen. And within that screen, I can navigate to another screen. And then within that, I can navigate to another screen. And then when I go back, I'm able to go back pretty easily because I'm just popping up the bar tab. And I have to mention I'm using Jetpack Compose for that. That's why it's pretty seamless. So looking at the code, pretty cool. So in our code here, as you can see, we have the destination, which is a sealed class. And a sealed class in Kotlin are used for several purposes. And that is mainly to create a restricted class hierarchy that is useful in a variety of scenarios. And that can be number one, limited inheritance, grouping related types, and pattern matching. Now, inside the destination class, as you can see, there are three things that we have. We have the route, we have the icon, and the title. So if you're a visual person, you know what I'm trying to build here. I'm trying to build a route that's a transaction, another one that's a budget, another one that's a task, and a setting. Now, the route is where we will be navigating to. The icon just defines the icon of that particular transaction, for instance, the budget icon, the task icon, the setting icons. And then the title just gives this particular object of mine, which are screens actually, that particular title. So if you clicked on, let's say, transaction, you would see a title transaction in it. Now, that code is so clean, I have to say, because to me, I mean, I know people would say, oh, you're passing screens, you can make, to me, I don't want to pull context there, but there are better ways of achieving things in Android. So definitely, you can look at other smart ways of handling the screens, but in that screen, to me, I was like, okay, I'm good with that. I'm displaying stuff I want to display. Next on my slide, I have this particular companion object. And what it does, it's just iterates through those particular objects that I have in my bottom navigation, which is a transaction, budget, tasks, and settings. And you'll see how I will use this next in my other slide. So connecting the dots, we will have this app screen that I'll create that's a composable. And there, as you see, I'm using something that I'm calling the Remember Nav Controller. So Nav Controller is part of Android's navigation component library and is used for managing navigation within the app. For many of us here, if you've built before in Android, I have to say, you might have seen how hard it was to create like an up bar, a bottom bar, how hard it was. But with Jetpack Compose, you can just call the scaffold. That's what the scaffold does. It gives you that ability to either have a top bar, a bottom bar, and then the content, which is so amazing if you ask me. So here, as you can see, what we do in the scaffold, which is a composable function used to create a basic app layout structure, it typically includes an upper, bottom upper, or other UI elements commonly found within the app. And in our case, we're just using two. So next, what we're going to look at is our bottom navigation. So if you see in the bottom navigation, we've created a composable called bottom navigation bar. It takes in a nav controller and the app items, which are destination. Notice the companion object I created? That's what I'm calling it, app items, which is destination.toList. So companion objects in Kotlin, they're pretty easy to access. So if you want to access something from anywhere, create a companion object, you'll be able to capture them pretty easily. And when we go to bottom navigation bar, which I know it's a lot of code, but stay with me. So in our bottom navigation bar, we have the nav controller, and then we have the app items. Within the app items, we have the list of destinations, the sealed class that I created. The bottom navigation is provided to us by Jetpack Compose, and there I'm setting the color in the first step. So, and a good practice that I always follow is that in everything that I'm building in mobile right now using Jetpack Compose, always click inside it and just check what does it take. That has helped me to become more productive because I'm able to look at, what does bottom navigation actually take? And what do I need to pass? And this also makes it much easier for us developers to build our own customized reusable component because we can easily define them, passing nullable when we don't need them, and just defining them when we need them, and making our productivity much easier. So I would really want to know from Google, maybe that's a question for Google, how the productivity has increased for developers when they use Jetpack Compose. Because to me, if you ask me, mine has increased. Now, we have the val back entry as state. So this line obtains the current backstack entry using the current backstack entry as state extension function of the nav controller. The backstack entry represents the current destination in the navigation. So that's very important to know. Now, we also have the nav current route. And there, as you can see, we're just calling the nav backstack entry dot, and then there, because it's nullable, destination dot route. So this line, what it does, it just extracts the current route, that's the destination, from the backstack entry, if available, and it will be used to determine which item in the bottom navigation bar is currently selected. How cool is that for us? When I began the conversation, I showed you the previous screen, which had like so many things in one. I know this doesn't look like very less. I like maybe the color makes it feel more like cleaner code or good code, but bear with me. Where we have the app items, what we're doing with that, if you notice that's a list of destinations we're just looping through. Instead of creating separate, you can do that. You can create bottom navigation 1, 2, 3, 4, but we don't know how to do that. We can create pretty easily just one through going through the loop for each item. And then we do the bottom navigation item. And then in the icon, what we've done, we've just passed the icon, item.icon. And then the content description, which is very important. We have to remember to be accessible. I like to mention this. So this is a funny story, just to deviate a little bit. Before, I didn't know why we used to use content description until I had to dig into it. Like, why does everything that has an image has a content description? And I was like, oh my goodness, I need to be aware of this. And from then, I stopped saying equals now, because I know many developers have done that. So if you're listening to this talk, ensure that everywhere there's a content description, please give it a good content description. We have to be accessible. Now, when we have that for each, we have the bottom navigation item. Again, going back there. So for the label, that's just the text. And what I'm just doing is I'm getting the items, dot title. Selected content color is just when the selected content is clicked, this is the color. And for the unselected content color, that's just saying that I want it to be this color. Now, there's a good Boolean here that should ask, always show label. So this is if you're a visual person, this line here is just telling you that if I'm navigating through, let's say, budget, tasks, or settings, what I want to do is always show the label. If you don't want to show the labels, that means you just want to show the icons, just set this to false, and all of it will be false. And then selected there, that last one we just say in the character root, loop goes to item equals root. I have a lambda back down there, which is on click. So what happens when these sections are all clicked? Let's go and try to implement that. So when we're clicked, what do? We go to navcontroller.navigate, item.root. And then inside the nav controller, we have to get that graph destination, and then we have to pop up. We save the state, and then we can do the launch sync top and set that to true. And then always ensure we restore our state. So the onClick specifies the action to take when the item is clicked, and it uses the navcontroller.navigate method to navigate to corresponding route, and it provides the national navigation configuration options, which is very important. So if you get your own time, when you start implementing, look into this. And I'll also provide these slides for whoever wants to build, because you can build, this is a complete app that you can build that has all these sections, so it's pretty cool. Now let's look at the app navigation. And if you remember, the app navigation was called inside here. Let's see where we called it. Inside here, inside the content. So going back forward a little bit. There. Let's look at what we have in the app navigation. So this is where it gets juicy. I look at that code and smile, because I'm like, oh, pretty beautiful, pretty cool. So what we're doing here in the app navigation, we are passing in the nav host controller. If you've built Android before, it's similar to what we used to have, just the nav host. But here what we're telling is that this nav host will have the nav controller, will have a start destination. So it's very important to tell the start destination. And this is because when you launch your application, you need to ensure that it goes to that exact place. So if you want your start destination to be, let's say, an onboarding screen, that's where it will start from. And then from the onboarding screen, which I don't think it's a good pattern, you can, so for the onboarding screen, this is what you can do. You can tell it, I'll save this particular preference such that if somebody has gone through the onboarding the first time, don't show it, because we don't want to show the onboarding screen all the time for people that don't want to do it. But if you want to show the onboarding all the time, feel free to let it be a start destination. And then once you're done, you can navigate to another screen that you want to, either home, or let's say that's transaction, budget, or task or settings. So the composable, the ones you see that are marked by yellow, so we are passing the root. And what we're doing, we're just calling those particular composable functions, the transaction, which are screens, budget, tasks, and settings. And then once you complete, voila, this is how our app will look like. We'll see task, budget, transactions, and that's how it will be. Pretty easy. That's how it is now to build bottom navigation in Jetpack Compose. Very simplified. Now, I know people might think that's not very simplified, but to me, I found that to be pretty nice. Now, let's talk a little bit about where it gets a little bit complex, because I have to admit that it's never a straight line. It's not linear in any coding. There's always complexities in everything. And a couple of complexity comes through when you have a big place that you're navigating to. So this one, for instance, here, you can see, if you're a visual person on this particular slide, think about it as a screen that has a couple of destinations. We have nav currency, nav rate, nav overview, and then we have another one that actually has another argument within it. How do you define that? That's how you would define it. And as you can see, the good thing is that you can easily say that this particular route has argument, and that's how you would pass the argument. Like there you see I have the argument adds that I'm passing. So pretty straightforward. And then here, this is how you would handle it if you want to create a different way. This is the different types of screens. This is now not a bottom navigation, but rather a different type of navigation where you have screens that go to other sections. This is how you define them. And I think there are a couple of bugs that people have reported before, but there are ways of solving them. And this is how you would just go on with the, let's say, navigating to back, where you just do the pop to back stack, which is pretty straightforward too. And then when the items are clicked, and that's how you would do, like you would have a task navigation and do all that stuff that's there. Let's say when you have the back, that's what you do. And in fact, if you have, so for the view model is, if you have anything that you want to use in the view model, you can also pass the view model. But to me that's just an example. I needed to use the view model for something, so I put it in there and then I was able to use it. So this is pure pseudocode. This one do not run, it will not work, but the previous one will work. So complex navigation type, safety in Kotlin DSL and Navigation Compose. This is also very important for anybody that's handling complex navigation. So I posted a slide here, and this is all credit to developer.android.com. So you can go look at how they handle this, which is a couple of apps might have that. So feel free to look into that code, because I noticed that not all navigation is pretty straightforward and easy. So things that always come to question every time that I'm doing any talks in navigation is deep linking too, because deep linking has its own set of navigation. So how does deep linking work in Android? I have a couple of pseudocode too, and before we do that, we have the explicit deep links and implicit deep links, similar to the way I defined before, but this is their definition, as you can see there. But how would you really use this? So again, as before, if you've used any particular deep link or done any deep link, you would definitely need to define this in your manifest first. And then after that, you would definitely need to pass any data between, and this is how you would do the passing the data. And again, this is just pure pseudocode. There's a lot that goes into building this, so just highlighting a couple of sections that you can look into. And then conditional navigation, this is where you're navigating the condition. Like for instance, if logged in, do this, else do that. So pretty well welcomed in Jetpack Compose. So I would highly recommend, if you have any type of conditional navigation too, it's pretty easy now that you can do that. And then advanced navigation flow. So this is just showcasing how it's more clear and easier these days too to use that. But as you can see here, it's similar to the bottom navigation, but here just giving you an example of, you have a home screen, you have a detailed screen, how do I navigate there? What happens when I click? So you can navigate with the actions. So these are the actions that I showed before. You can just use action to navigate to details, and then you pass the item ID. Also pseudocode there. And navigation component advantages, as we almost wrap up, is simplified navigation setup. You can navigate with arguments. There's a deep linking support. And I always like to acknowledge that there's no one size fits all in any writing code. So always look into what really fits into your program. Like I mentioned, we've experienced issues too in our own app base, where if you're using legacy, it's going to be pretty not easy. So definitely it will work if it's a new app. If it's a new app, you have an easy ride. So just to say. And then handling the backstack, super big advantage. The backstack keeps tracks now. There's automatic handling of backstack operation when using Jetpack Compose navigation. And now developers can customize the backstack behavior, which is super cool. I think you could do that before, but I feel like I've attended some sessions where I've listened to people complain about how they have to build upon navigation in their own app and they have to use other libraries, which I feel like it really makes your app heavier. Because you don't have to keep including other libraries. You want to be able to build navigation in your own terms. So I feel like Jetpack Compose offers this. And then again, it's always continuous learning. I like to mention this a lot because there's nothing that goes on without any learning. No. You've listened to my talk today about how it's simplified, and I've showed a good simple example of how you can build your bottom navigation. I could have done a drawer, but I don't think many people use drawer. I think someone raised their hand. I was like, wait, what are you doing in the drawer? We don't even use the profile anymore. But that said, it's pretty also simplified. And I think I talk about that. I have a book, Modern Android 13, where I actually show how you can navigate with drawer. And then this is where you can find the links to the resources from this topic today and the talks today. And that's why you can also learn a little bit of navigation in Jetpack Compose, because that's my book that I wrote this year. And
not a smooth talker under pressure. Sweaty palms ain't making it much better. Something about you feels so special. Pretty up from the minute that I met you.